Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here. Maggie Cawley. I serve as the Executive Director of OpenStreetMap US. I got my start in GIS, though. So I am here with you. I used to make maps, and now I talk about them. Alrighty, let's talk about OpenStreetMap US. Usually ask for a show of hands. I don't know how we could do that today, but how many people have heard of OpenStreetMap? Anybody? Can we do this virtual hands? A little bit about me. Like I said, I started in GIS. Here's some icons that describe my life in 20 seconds. So we'll just go through that. If you're interested in me more, I can talk after somehow. So OpenStreetMap is the free map of the world that anyone can edit. I see a lot of thumbs up out there. I think that's the way that everyone's raising their hand to say that they've heard of OpenStreetMap. How many people have edited or consumed the data? If you go to openstreetmap.org, this is what it looks like. But it also looks like this. It's a massive free geodatabase. It's really a geocommons of the world, of everything that exists physically, built by millions of people around the world. It's used in thousands of applications. If you see a little eye in the corner as well of a map, it's going to be OpenStreetMap. That's a new way of attributing instead of putting the whole OpenStreetMap contributors. It's used by thousands of organizations. Some of you might recognize here. If anyone's got an Amazon package delivered to their house, it probably used OpenStreetMap data to get there. But it's also used in a lot of really important critical public applications, wildfire response, navigation, bus routing. We could go on for days with those. How does it all work? Because I'm speaking to a GIS crowd, I like to get into the nitty-gritty just for a few minutes. So it's a key value tagging system. It's more than just streets. Don't let the name fool you. These are some old stats, but I mean, over 300,000 miles of just bus routes alone. The key value tag really allows, think unlimited attributes and metadata. If you can think of it to add to a point, a line, or a polygon, you can probably do it in OpenStreetMap. If you haven't been to the wiki, I always like to send people who like to dive into data schemas here. Tagging a fire hydrant or a flagpole, it's all here. It'll teach you how. So head on over to the wiki if you're interested in that. Here's how it presents itself in the OpenStreetMap data. Here's a conference center in Arizona, has the address. You can link the website, you can link to Wikidata, and that's just one point out of millions and millions. You can see who changed it. I edited this conference center. You can see on the left side there, edited by Maggie Maps. It's my OSM username. It's not just edited by volunteers. Government entities, organizations, corporations have their own mapping teams editing OpenStreetMap and reviewing it every day. Goes into the database, and then it's used by governments, media, academia, humanitarian agencies, nonprofit organizations, and like I said, those big corporations. It also finds its way into GIS software, QGIS, Esri, Base Maps, it's a big part of the Overture Maps Foundation, and it finds its way into third-party consumer apps like AllTrails, Uber, Strava, if you've used any of those. What I want to touch on today is it is more than just a base map. We are a community, and we are providing truly free data, a pathway to engage citizenship, and really being able to document communities wherever they are and empowering communities to add their own data. Here's a picture of our last conference in Salt Lake City. I will talk about the Boston conference today too. Why do people do this? This is a question I get asked a lot. So here are some quotes from some of the mappers. People learn about it, and then they start contributing in their own neighborhoods, and they really get hooked. If you haven't edited, be careful. It's a slippery slope, but I encourage you to go in, look for your high school or your elementary school, see if it's tagged correctly and update it if it's not. The other question I get a lot is, how is this organized? So thankfully, it's a really well organized yet unorganized ecosystem. It's very distributed. The actual servers live in Ireland. The project was founded in 2004 in the UK, and the OpenStreetMap Foundation was created to keep those servers on, keep the lights on. They act as the legal custodian for OpenStreetMap. The data, OpenStreetMap US is an independent 501c3, and we serve the US community. We have programs, tech, and tools, and we really are here to engage the stakeholders across the country. We have a volunteer board of directors, 5 folks, and now we have a staff of 5. There are community groups across the country that we support and encourage even more. There's Mapping New York up in the corner. They did a bike map thing during COVID. That's a picture of that. A closer one for y'all is Map Time Be More up in Baltimore. I know there's Mapping DC and GeoDC as well. It's more broad. Out in Salt Lake City, there's OpenStreetMap Salt Lake City. So OpenStreetMap US is kind of that, we're the convener of all of these different groups. We sit in the center of everyone who touches OpenStreetMap, and we bring them together through many different ways. The government, the nonprofit, the academia, the citizen volunteers. Through our events, here's State of the Map in Richmond. We also support the tooling and tech behind a lot of the editing and QA/QC capabilities. We have 2 engineers that work really hard on a lot of these things. We also have community charter projects. We have programs. We bring OpenStreetMap into high schools and colleges through our Teach OSM program. We help to build curriculum for AP high school students learning geography. And Mapping for Impact, we partner with nonprofits to identify their data needs and then go out and map them. We partnered with Kaboom in Colorado to have our community map all of the playgrounds in Colorado so that Kaboom could then identify those gaps and advocate for play equity and where new playgrounds should be built. We hold events online, Mapping USA. We participate in Fed Geo Day. We have Mappy Hours. They're all virtual, so feel free to join us. The next one's May 21st. And State of the Map, like I said, I'll talk about at the end. We have working groups. We've got 9 working groups. It's kind of a lot, but it's great. They're all talking about different things: education, crowdsourcing, trails, pedestrian access, imagery. You name it, we could probably create a working group around it. Today, I want to hone in on some of the things we're doing in OpenStreetMap in government space. I think we have a lot of folks here from that arena, so I thought these stories might be interesting to you. 5 years ago, OpenStreetMap US formed one of our first working groups, and it's our government working group. We have representation from state, local, federal agencies coming together once a month to share stories, learn new things, and really start working together on how we better collaborate around OpenStreetMap and government. We regularly do presentations. So I have a link to all of these. It's a secret YouTube link. These are unlisted presentations, but for all of you here today, go ahead and get in there and check these out if you're interested in the case study. So North Carolina DOT recently presented to the group on how they use OpenStreetMap data to detect when their internal roads data set is out of date. So, if a road is widened and separated with a median, but the change hasn't been relayed by the local DOT to the state, North Carolina DOT detects a discrepancy with their data. They have a semi-manual process that they presented in this talk, and then they can then update the North Carolina data set. So it's kind of a fact checker, light touch, but also really important. And when something changes on their side, they update it in OpenStreetMap so that they match. Kendall County in Illinois, this is kind of a next level integration of OpenStreetMap. They started in traditional GIS for their GIS office, kind of pulling all these different layers from different databases, and now they're starting to lean more onto OpenStreetMap, editing directly in the map to update features for their county. All of their staff are trained on how to use OpenStreetMap and edit it. Everyone has accounts. They're even using JOSM. They're updating as much as possible. So this says in the slide, if we're going to use this data, let's make it awesome. So they've really leaned into becoming stewards of OpenStreetMap in Kendall County, Illinois, which is an amazing thing to see. And then, 3 interns, here's a stat, they updated almost 23,000 buildings and 460 miles of sidewalk. They are brand new to OpenStreetMap, but they jumped in there and they were able to use our tools as we try to make them as accessible as possible. And finally, Portland TriMet. This is a long-standing example of how OpenStreetMap supports transit services in the Portland metro region. This is a great talk as well. You can find it on the YouTube. But you know, they really dove in at a time when OpenStreetMap was still growing, about 10 years ago, and they made a concerted effort to make the data quality good enough in the Portland metro area to support this use case, and update OpenStreetMap, and they still update OpenStreetMap with any routes change. Another example I wanted to talk about today was OpenStreetMap and trails. It's a little bit about, it involves government, but also getting public out onto our land. So, I mean, in this use case, who uses OpenStreetMap? Pretty much any app that's getting people out onto our public lands. Why do they use it? Well, it turns out that a lot of our mappers also really like to get outside. So it's become one of the best resources for campsites, trailheads, trails that is available in the world. And it crosses boundaries. So a few years ago, I got a message from a park coordinator and saying, you know, a lot of people are not using these paper maps anymore for our parks, and they're using these apps. When we reach out to them to say something is wrong, they say, you have to talk to OpenStreetMap. So anytime you get a note that says, Dear OpenStreetMap, you kind of worry. So we put together a mappy hour with this person and did a call for participation in how we can start to address this issue. So, you know, a line is just a line unless it has metadata. So we found that, you know, any missing data could lead to search and rescue and some bad situations for folks out in them, especially if they're new to hiking. So we launched our Trail Stewardship Initiative, and we are bringing together all the stakeholders that we can find to talk about trails and data and make things more complete. We have a Trails Working Group that meets every month, and we've worked on best practices for tagging trails. We developed tagging guidelines for the community, but we also developed rendering guidelines for the app companies. So if it's tagged in OpenStreetMap a certain way, this is how you should show the line. If it's an informal, please don't put it as a thick line. Let's do it small, or just don't put it on your map at all. So we've got a great cross-section of state, federal, local government, MPS, BLM, U.S. Forest Service, but also Arizona State DOT and Department of Recreation. And it just keeps growing. So this is one of our biggest collaborations. Here's an example of that for everyone who likes imagery. So once these, that's the after, but the before, everything was kind of tagged. It didn't have the data it needed to differentiate between the main stem trails and the side or social trails. So once that was mapped, we worked with All Trails to update the way it was rendered in their app with really great results, as you can see here. Through this initiative, it's pretty grassroots, but we have increased the trail network across the country by 38% and really started to tag those really important things, like if it's official or unofficial, social or non-social trails. So if this is interesting to you, you're welcome to join the initiative. Again, the other question is, what makes OpenStreetMap so great? And, you know, to me, it's place is personal. No one knows their backyard like the person who lives there, and people are really connected to their edits. If they see something wrong in the community, they'll fix it, and you can do the same. So love for everyone to get involved. You can visit OpenStreetMap.us for all of this stuff. You can join our Slack. We've got 8,000 people in the community in our Slack channels for everything from tagging to buses and trails, and you name it, you can find a Slack channel. We have a membership. We're a membership-driven nonprofit, so you're invited to become an individual member or an organizational member. If you're an agency or a company that relies on OpenStreetMap, this is a great way to invest in the work of the community and OpenStreetMap US. And you're invited to join the working groups. Lastly, you're all invited to State of the Map US Boston, June 19th, 2021. This year's theme is Charting the Course. We are celebrating our 15th anniversary as a nonprofit, so it kind of hits two sides. You know, what's the future look like? But we're also leaning into all things mobility. So we have a full track from anything from running to transportation routing for multimodal transportation. So that'll be in June in Boston. And for all of you here today, the first 15 people to sign up using this code get a 15% discount. The other thing I want to announce is that OpenStreetMap US has seen that a lot of our government partners and former government partners are unable to make it this year due to cuts, as you all probably know. So we are trying to raise money to support a scholarship fund to support the attendance of these folks so that those connections and networks are not lost during this time. So spread the word. The more money we can raise, the more people we can send. So, thank you very much. Hopefully we have a few minutes for questions, and I really appreciate being here. Thanks, DMV GIS.
Thank you so much, Maggie. It looks like we do have a few questions that have been submitted. And first is from Noah. How is OSM user submitted data quality controlled to ensure accuracy?
There's a data working group. So any like very erroneous things that happen, there's a lot of checks in place. OpenStreetMap US maintains a tool called OSM CHA, which is a QA/QC tool. A lot of the checks happen by the folks who then serve the data. So since OpenStreetMap is that database, we're not actively serving it ourselves to consumers. So, you know, if you're an Uber or Lyft, you run your checks. If you're a Microsoft, you run your checks. And a lot of the users use our tools to do that. It's also kind of a, you know, many eyes make all bugs shallow kind of situation. So if there's something that comes up, if someone accidentally tags a building, you know, to be municipal and it's residential, you know, that will probably get caught by someone locally. We don't run full accuracy. It's not an engineering database or anything. So it's really become mature enough that we see fewer and fewer errors.
Excellent. Thank you. We do have another question from Naomi. What application/software used to check engines of vehicles at the port?
Engines of vehicles. We don't deal with vehicles at ports, so I'm not sure what you mean there. Maybe you can clarify in another question.
Certainly, we'll wait for that. And just a reminder to everyone to please feel free to submit your questions. It looks like we are good for now.
I see one here. How can we join a working group? Head over to openstreetmap.us and get involved in the dropdown. There's a list of working groups there and then a form to sign up. We invite folks on every couple months. We'll add new people to the working group. And yes, I will share a link to this presentation. Absolutely, I can share that in the chat after I'm off the virtual stage. Any other questions? Nothing. I guess everyone's too busy registering for State of the Map US, so they get that discount. DMV GIS 15. So, let's see.
Looks like we have one more question come in from Erica. Does OpenStreetMap US make effort to encourage data users to adhere to the OSM Foundation's attribution guidelines?
Absolutely. You know, this is free data, but it's not free to make. It takes time and energy, and you know that attribution is really important to the community. We're not attribution police. We really rely on those users to realize how important it is for us to see that attribution, to fundraise for the organization, but also to encourage new mappers. It's really great for people to see that OpenStreetMap data is driving a lot of the things we rely on. And that's one of the main motivators. So when people don't attribute, it really loses, it's a loss for everyone. So please attribute us. Anything else? I do encourage everyone to head to openstreetmap.org, create a username. That's probably the hardest part of editing in OSM, and just dive in there. And you know, once you start editing, you start to understand things a little bit more, even if you are a user. I think as a GIS community, it's kind of fun and also a way to improve the map for everyone.
Wonderful. Well, Maggie, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate the insightful look into OpenStreetMap and government. So we appreciate it.